When you meet with your bankruptcy attorney to discuss whether you should file bankruptcy, you need to understand whether or not it is the right time for you to file bankruptcy. And filing bankruptcy is affected by many issues, but one of the things that's most important is your tax refund. Filing bankruptcy at a time when you are going to receive a tax refund is a mistake. So make sure that you actually file for your taxes, get your refund, and spend the money before you file bankruptcy. Your bankruptcy estate includes everything that is not exempt, and your tax refund, even though it might just be a stimulus check from the government, is going to fall into the bankruptcy estate. In other words, it is not an exempt asset. When you file bankruptcy, everything that you own is divided into two different categories. Those assets that are exempt are protected by law, and the trustee cannot take those assets and use that money to pay the creditors. The other assets are not exempt, and the trustee is able to take them and has the responsibility to use that money to pay the creditors as much money as he possibly can. So your tax refund is like money in the bank. Each paycheck you send money to the government, and if you have more money than is necessary to pay your tax liability, there will be a refund coming to you. And that refund is your money, and it's like a cash asset, and it's like money in the bank. When you have money on deposit in the bank, then the bank owes that money to you, and the government owes money to you that is not used for your tax liability, and the trustee has to take that money and distribute it to the creditors. So make sure that you file your return, prepare it in advance, make sure that you know whether you're going to receive a refund before you file your tax or before you file your bankruptcy. And then you need to also make sure that you spend the money. So if you get the tax refund, don't just stuff it in your sock drawer. You have to spend the money, and you have to keep receipts for indicating how you spent that money. So the trustee will want to make sure that the money was actually spent. Now, good advice about how to spend the money is for you to examine your exemption laws. The exemption laws of the state where you file may not be the right exemption laws, and that can become complicated. But if you've lived in the state where you're filing for at least 2 years, you should be able to use the laws of the state where you're filing. If you move to the state within the last 2 years, you should consult with your attorney about making sure that the right exemption laws are used. You can usually spend the money for living expenses, that is on food and clothing and electricity and home supplies. Many people ask me whether or not it's possible or appropriate to spend their tax refund to pay their bankruptcy fees, and the answer is yes. This is probably the safest and most legitimate purpose for spending your tax refund.